Yo, what's up? This is Cam from the Independent Musician Podcast, and I got with me Chance Bear all the way from Germany. Him and I used to play in a band together, and he is a guitarist and, let's say, aspiring producer. Yeah, and we're going to be talking about where hardcore and metalcore and all these pseudo young person accessible metal genres are moving, and how they're kind of leaving behind a lot of their hardcore roots to not reach a new audience, but I think reach. Well, we're just going to talk about that. So what's up, man?
Not much. Hanging out in Berlin. I moved here half a year ago or so, but just been working on trying to get my own music started, and try to play some stuff that I don't take too seriously, because I found that a lot of my frustration from writing has just been from setting very high expectations for what I want the music to be. And I'm not able to execute that in the time manner that I feel I want to. So just kind of having fun with it for part of the time, and then just having my project that I just setting manageable expectations. But yeah, man, been excited hearing all the stuff that you've been putting out with Smoke from All the Friction, and all the other content you've been going through.
Yeah. I don't set unreasonable expectations, so I can't. Yeah.
I feel like I'd speak to you on that, probably.
Yeah, like condemnation. All right, so we're gonna talk about a lot about band Bring Me the Horizon. They were historically, I guess they've kind of evolved a lot. Their first album was like a deathcore album, basically, and then their first real albums was Suicide Season, which came out in 2009. And they just released an album 10 years later called Amo, which is about, I wouldn't say as far from deathcore as you can get, but it's really far from deathcore. There's barely a scream in the entire thing, and I don't think there's a real true breakdown by any means. And they have actually, they more than a lot of bands, I think they've been leading the charge of these hardcore-ish bands evolving out of the tropes and box that they've been kind of stuck in for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a box that they feel that they've stuck in. I think this is a band that really has a strength in, I don't know whether it's telling where a trend is going and monopolizing on it quickly, or just being able to rapidly evolve their sound. So in 2004, 2005, 2006, they were, yes, exactly. They're like deathcore, noisecore. I can hear metalheads saying actually
it's post-aggressive, blah blah, hardcore. Yeah.
But then in their second and third album, their second album, Suicide Season, and the third album, There Is a Hell, they really started to turn the fader up on metalcore elements, and having more of these anthemic, melodic overtures for some of their songs that I personally grown to love in Sempiternal, which is, I have a wall back here of all my favorite albums of all time, and that is right in the center. Sempiternal being pretty much, it's like anthem metalcore band. And obviously their most recent album, before that, the That's the Spirit album, they definitely started to slow down on metalcore and go way more towards the, I don't know, maybe pop or synthcore.
I guess hard rock almost, not like Disturbed or bro rock, but
yeah. So it seems like something that's just, they want to appeal to more people, and this is something that I've had a very strong opinion on, and then I've caught myself as being this dumb elitist. But if you play, if it is not a bad thing to want more people to enjoy your music. That's what we all got into music for, is to have people enjoy what we play, right? So it's something where it's okay, if a band plays one of your favorite albums of all time, the next album isn't anything that you like, rather than being bitter about it, just be happy for the new people that get to enjoy this group, you know.
Yeah, I heard this interesting quote, and he was talking. There's a guy named Adam Neely. He's like a music YouTuber dude, and it was just kind of like an off comment he said that it really piqued my attention. Was a lot of people get angry when a band changes their sound. Like Linkin Park actually went through this. Like their last album before, actually their roots of like what they were in hybrid theory and Meteor, and less like, I don't know, angry screamy Chester Bennington stuff, and then like a lot more electronic and just a different feels almost about the whole thing, as well as genre. And they got criticized a lot for it. And Adam Neely was talking about like, well, why would you criticize somebody who's making their own art? The main reason you probably do that is because that person's art, let's say Hybrid Theory or whatever, or Suicide Season by Bring Me the Horizon, that was your album. That was able to represent a part of you that you can't even describe. But like this is a piece of me. This is an expression of me. You've kind of used them as the beacon, like the emissary, the ambassador of you, and now they've changed it. Granted, they didn't know that they were the ambassador of you, and it's honestly not their role at all. But now this ambassador has failed you. They like, hey, you represent a part of me, and you changed that, and I didn't change. You're wrong. You're doing this wrong. You're representing me wrong now. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never thought of it that way.
I think just how a lot of people deal with changing of sounds for bands that they've followed is very polarizing, and a lot of musicians enjoy that. I think a lot of people think that if you have a reaction on your work, that's a positive action, or that's a positive outcome, right? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I guess I have two ends of it. I mean, obviously, I want another band we were talking about, Inner Shikari. Their latest album, like way less heavy, way less aggressive than the music that actually got me into them originally. And at first I just kind of panned the album because it wasn't what I wanted it to be. It wasn't what I expected it to be. But then, like, I guess the question for me is that, like, I as an artist, like, you can keep writing the same kind of style that you wrote on your previous stuff, but if it's no longer an honest expression of what you're doing, it's not really what you're feeling anymore. Should you continue to do that to appeal, to appease, and to give something to the people that are loyal to you? You know?
Yeah.
Because it's a two-way interaction. There is, like, it's not just like you guys supported me and like we're in this together and like you're the fan and I'm the artist, but there still is a relationship there, you know, and they both need each other.
Yeah, I agree with you on one end, but on the other end, so as far as like actually creating the music and actually doing something that I think is genuine, and that's a key thing there. Like, I think that people, the public in general, can sniff out when you're being ingenuous almost immediately.
Unless you're really good at it.
They're really good.
All the money. So,
I mean, there's either two ways of how this goes down. There's people or artists find a different way to express the emotion that they were feeling from that created that heavy sound, or there's just the fact that it's like, oh well, I don't feel that way anymore. I don't have this anger, this whatever is fueling that in me anymore, and I don't really feel like just keeping and playing this same tune again and again. And I think that's kind of from what I've read, Ali of Bring Me the Horizon is kind of dealing with, like, through a lot of like these metal, quote unquote metal years. Like, he was dealing with a lot of things like drug addiction and just a lot of pain and
metal stuff.
Say what?
Metal stuff, basically.
Yeah, metal things. And now he's like free from all that, and from what everybody can tell, he's very happy and moved on, and he wants to. That's like he's a different person, so he's not going to write the same music. And to want, you know, him to go back and delve into that, like, darkness that he's come out of, it seems unfair, or just, I don't know. It seems like it's not the fans' place, right? And maybe there's not very open monologues or dialogues between fans and artists about like, look, I'm not going to make this because that's not who I am anymore, you know?
Mm. I mean, maybe that's like, it's like the biggest trope ever that like when an artist gets off drugs, their music sucks. Maybe that contributor to that is that the drugs or whatever those dark things that they're dealing with are the motivation for them to write this kind of music. And then you're basically wanting them to continue to write this kind of music, but the factors, ingredients that got them there are not really there anymore.
Right. And that'll circle back to just not being able to be genuine. And I think that's what people connect with more than heavy or not heavy, more than a certain sound or an old album, is just genuine emotion. And that's kind of our responsibility as musicians, is to be able to convey that without it being forced and without it being contrived.
I guess, and also it would depend on why they're changing sounds. And I think Bring Me the Horizon is definitely warrants this critique. Is they've always done this, but they've always changed their sound in an extremely topical way. They're kind of like about a year ahead of, or 6 months ahead of where the market's trending in a lot of ways. Like in a lot, and so this is an honest expression. I was like, it also seems like a really opportunistic decision as well. You know, I mean, not that those can't coincide, and you can't find the Venn diagram in the middle of, okay, where's my honest expression is this big thing, then where my, like, this is where the market is. Let's focus on that center part. But like, it is kind of coincidental at the same time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is really interesting to see how the changes to the music, like the music industry, and what people are listening to and what people are interested in, are trickling to pretty much every part of the music industry. Like we saw that like with guitar pedals at NAMM. All these guitar pedals are like, half of them are like synth engines or whatever. It's turning your guitar, and it's, you know, say what you want of them, but like it's definitely capitalizing on, this is what people are wanting to listen to. This is what people are wanting to sound like. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this is a slightly different topic, but I'm curious of I guess the Warped Tour bands, that era of music. Like a lot of them just kind of faded, or released an album or two basically doing the same thing and like a minor variation of it, and you never really heard from them again because they weren't able to evolve. A lot of the pop punk bands, same thing, kind of stuck in 2008, and it's not the music that they want to create, or feel like the only music they know how to create is not relevant and doesn't connect to people anymore.
Well, I mean,
not anybody new. I go with that.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but there's always going to be that subset of people that will say, I buy any pop punk album that comes out lately, or I listen to it. I guess is more it's more accurate nowadays. But you know, there's going to be niches where somebody is just, that's their favorite type of music, and
sure,
right, you know.
Yes, I'm not. I guess let me rephrase that. So in the sense of, you lose accessibility for new people.
Yeah.
Because you become like, and from a career decision, like Atreyu, you know, you're familiar with them, right? Like their last album is like, it's good. It's just, it sounds like 2012, you know? Like I like it because it sounds like a good 2012 album, but I would never share with anybody because it's behind, you know, like it doesn't acknowledge where things are now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that being said, this is something I've found myself really cognizant of in projects that I take really seriously, where it's like, I kind of just write just based on a sound or a riff that I'm wanting to elaborate on, and then if it gets to a point where I'm like, oh shit, this sounds just like, you know, this other band's album that they put out 8 years ago. It's like there's kind of a choice you have to make there, where it's like, well, do I either just ditch it entirely just because I don't want to redo something that's been done, or do I just push through and try to reimagine it slightly? You know, it's kind of tricky.
Yeah, I mean, and there's this weird thing of like, we've toiled with this thing of like, why you do this? I was like, well, what's your main reason? Like, what's your main reason? I'm like, I have 6 main reasons, and I can't decide which of them is most important. Like, do I want to play music that people like? Definitely, that's my number one reason. Do I want to play music that's authentic? That's my number one reason. And like, and just, I can't really consistently prioritize one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think a big part of that is finding somebody to collaborate with that can cue you or steer you in the right direction or contribute things that change it up a little bit. So like if for example, like a band that I'm playing with, I'm playing bass and I have a very specific, you know, mindset of like I write these very like kind of groovy southern rock like things that just make your head nod but don't have any real substance to them. Like it's just a bunch of, it's like 2008 hair metal essentially, or hair rock, right? But and then there's this guy that like he plays guitar over top of this, and he finds a way to make me listen to it in a completely different way. Like he'll take a very groovy riff that I'm writing, and he'll play something over that I'm just like, I haven't heard this before, and I've played the same thing this whole time. So I think it's important to find maybe people who kind of can mix in flavors that might not be necessarily super original, but as a part of a whole, it will, you know, kind of get there.
Oh wait, didn't we talk about this guy? There's not much information about him, but Bring Me the Horizon's synth guy.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that was the first. What he started on Sempiternal, right?
Yeah, he did. But you've seen how like him and the guitar player have basically switched places. As if it were a virtual stage that you hear on the track, Sempiternal guitars right here, synth's back here, just kind of supporting. And now on this album, synth is pretty much everything, and there's like 3 guitar parts.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we put guitar in the song called Heavy Metal just because it felt weird not to, you know? Like, yeah, I mean, I guess at that point, like, at what point does I mean, I guess the historical thing is that the joke that you make is that you make a side project. When you diverge so heavily from a band's original idea that it almost becomes a separate thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, do you think it's important to? I was actually thinking about this. Like, if I went through their discography, and I'm like, all right, what are like common themes that are present throughout the entire thing? Not a huge amount. I would say if you skip the first album, I can find like there's these dark emotive vocal lines. There's not very many of them in Suicide Season, but there are a couple, and they just keep more and more and more present. That's like a common theme throughout all of it. The way he sings it's kind of consistent.
So you're talking about like Bring Me the Horizon as like the singer as a all from his beginning to end albums or most recent albums. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
There was like a little bit of like we used to talk about this like we used to play a lot of praise and worship music in church. Like basically the music would change all the time, but everybody would basically sing the same vocal like way. Like they would just kind of swap the music in and out.
Okay, pretty much. Yeah.
And I guess at what point should you just make a new band?
Yeah.
Or should you? You know?
I think it's pretty important. I recently have done exactly that. Like I mentioned before, like I was kind of taking my vision of what I wanted to have as my like baby or whatever, my project or my sound. And it was just getting to a point where I was just like beating my head against a wall, and like I would bring people in to help with it, and it would definitely change it, but it wasn't what I was hoping for, and then it just kind of turned into this like nasty feedback loop. And then I found that as soon as I was like, all right, I need to take a step back. I'm going to go have fun, work on a project with a couple of other musicians, and just try to get back to what made me enjoy music, and that's just like collaborating with other people and just seeing what comes up with it. And that allowed me to kind of like separate and isolate the project that I have a specific vision for, and I can just kind of chip away at that as my inspiration ebbs and flows. But like there's always just going to be that just stimulation of the brain with the other project. I don't know necessarily. I think the next point to make there is what kind of like does it matter the sound of the project? Like if you're like, hey, I really want to play this type of music, but it doesn't fit with my my number one project, like maybe I can just start a new one with that. Or if it's just something that's like I want to try the same thing with different inputs, different people.
Yeah, and so like on that, and it's a lot of the bands that we both like are kind of like follow this mindset. That works pretty well when you have like one visionary. Basically, like you're the god, and like you pick your subjects, and then as things change, you're like, all right, well, we're moving in a different direction. You can come with me, but this is what I'm gonna need. And if they're like, I don't really want, like a lot of guitarists are bad about this. They just want to play real guitar-driven music, I was like, hey, can you bake? And they're like, no, dude, I basically want to play some version of rock. That's basically what I want to do. I was like, well, I can't work with that, And
Well,
so like
breaking up a little bit, you said the guitar player would say, I basically want to play.
Oh yeah, so like at least a lot of guitarists I've met are not real open-minded about their role in evolving as an artist and a musician, and like this is the one thing or one general like section of things that they want to do. They want to play distorted guitar loudly, which
In the front.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if like you as a visionary or you as like kind of the driving force, like say like, all right, well this is not what we need to do here. Like you're probably gonna have to let them go, which can again work, but it requires you being in charge. Like Devin Townsend, like he has these different eras of like you started in a Strapping Young Lad, which is the heavy, super heavy stuff, and then he's evolved into like his own solo stuff, which is still heavy, but like he did need a different people, he needed less aggression, just he wanted volume. Yeah. And then DTP was a bunch of weird stuff, and like different albums on that, like he didn't even have like a metal drum. He had a metal drummer on one, and then a complete like jazz guy and a flautist on like new agey stuff. But he like it was because he was the sole guy kind of running everything. He was able to swap people in and out for different times and periods,
Yeah.
But most bands are not one visionary. Most bands are a collective,
Yeah, that's what I hear, man. But I have.
I've never experienced it. But
the only time it's been when I've let somebody else take the lead was with you. And like you had a very strong vision, and I would contribute here and there, but most of the time it was me saying like, okay, yeah, I can play that, which works perfectly in some scenarios. But if you have like there's so many different combinations of things that how people create music, and like there's, and I personally haven't had a lot of success with collaborating equally between all members of the band, and that's what I'm kind of working on with one of my side projects, and it's really like stretching out some muscles that I haven't stretched in a long time, and I think it's pretty healthy because like if you just get so tunnel visioned on writing music exactly how you write it, and you're used to just like swapping out members or assigning parts and stuff like that, you kind of lose the some of these kind of muscles and skills that it takes to identify when somebody is trying to contribute something and then play something that complements it. I think that's a really important thing to have, as well as on the fly songwriting, because like when you're sitting in your studio and you're just working away, you can say like you can turn things around super easily, but you don't have a play, and a slice button on a human being. So
Unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I think that like ties into like what makes Bring Me the Horizon Bring Me the Horizon. You know, is it all these guys working together? If you took one of them out, would it? I mean, that's a philosophical question. I'm aware. It's just like if you patch a gene, like you have a pair of jeans and you patch a hole, and then you patch a hole. At how many patches does it cease to be the pair of jeans anymore? I mean, not a very useful question in of itself, but
I think that's an interesting point because with Bring the Horizon, most bands that goes through such radical changes in sound like that, they are swapping out members, or they're like a Devin Townsend type thing where it's just one guy and then there's a bunch of people that help. There might be one or two that stick around for a couple albums, but for the most part they're swapping out. But Bring the Horizon is one of the things where they added the keyboard player for Sempiternal. I think maybe a little bit before that. And they've maybe swapped out like the secondary guitar player a few times. But other than that, their lineup has stayed pretty much identical and their sound has completely changed. So, there's all these interviews out there with Ollie about talking about why the band's going their way, and with Jordan Fish in the background piping in. But I would be so interested to hear from the drummer or the guitar player. Like, what are they thinking right now? Are they really excited with how the project's going? How has their contributions changed? How they've, written music changed? Are there stuff that they've got backlogged that might never see the light? All these kind of stuff. I'd be super interested to hear.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, because the reality is, like, the most comments is, this is not what I signed up for, eventually. Especially because, like you said, it went from a few bleeps and bloopies in a bridge to, like, hey, this is 90% of the album. And the guitar is just like, yeah, don't play power chords the next 4 songs, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, though. Like, I really like, I think Lee Malia is the name of the guitar player. He has some really beautiful lead type lines, and he's transferred that from album to album to album, and including this most recent one. Like, he has a very cool way of writing melodies that aren't too in your face, like most guitar players tend to go towards, but it blends nicely with the new style, and I really love that.
I mean, in some ways, like, I think the ideal thing for each, and this is something that I think artists and musicians need to take on the responsibility of, is evolving. Like, when you make a new sound, you don't know how people are going to react. But that's the most rock and roll thing ever, is that, like, I'm going to break some rules. This is what created hardcore and post-hardcore. This is what created a breakdown. These things evolved by people breaking the rules. And they're like, you're just going to play one note and just, like, everybody's going to play it together, and then you're not playing anything. That's wrong. And then it like effectively created a genre, like a very popular one, because they broke the rules. And now, once we found something that worked, we just, like, want to hold on to it. And I think that's an insecurity that we need to examine in ourselves as artists, like, because like, I think the main reasons we don't evolve is because we're scared. Like,
yeah. It's funny that's kind of how music evolving started, even way back in the days where the only music was just church, like church choirs and stuff like that. And there was a keyboard player, or not keyboard player, piano or organ player that was playing, and then if he hit that 4th note, that meant that was the note of the devil, and everybody was terrified of it. Like, oh, don't do that, And it's funny how, like, there's literal religious persecution of how music was played just because people were scared of it, and just because it was.
And I think it's just like a human thing. Like, you just, like, once you hear it enough and it's cool to you, it's the right way to do it,
Yeah.
Be it, I mean, obviously, be it from God or from some blogger on Kerrang or whatever, but.
So on the other hand here, so we've talked about Bring the Horizon and how it's evolved so gracefully, and it seems like they've honestly just gotten more and more popular from evolving. Has there been any bands that have stayed the exact same? Oh, actually, it's not even a question because I have an answer for it. A band that stayed the exact same for the entirety of its career, and people cannot get enough of that. And I think one of a really good example for that, and we might find out if I'm going to be right or wrong, is Tool. Tool's album in 2019 this year, because every single album, yes, they evolved, yes, they had different themes, but you heard it and you're like, that's Tool. And people cannot get enough of it. And a lot of, like the creative process seems like it's kind of been the same. It's the same members, it's the same songwriting techniques. They're not, going to drop an album that's just full of, synth or have a rapper play or something. So.
That's interesting. What I think part of that maybe is that they only released 4 full-length albums.
Yeah.
And they had side projects though, all of them, that were like, this is for this and this is for this, and they're like, if they couldn't put out what they wanted to do, they kind of just stopped.
Yeah. Well, literally, it definitely stopped. Okay.
Which, in some ways, but to me, I'll give. This is my personal feelings, that I'd rather a band give me exactly what I wanted for X thing and then evolve to a different sound. And then I personally like that, because is between the two options, basically they quit and go do side projects, or they continue this band and then evolve with it. So they change certain things, but not a complete. I mean, regardless what I think, there's some very iterative changes, like from the all these different Bring Me the Horizon albums, all these different, the Inner Shikari albums, all these different. Devin Townsend's a bit not, because he actually makes different groups. Like he intentionally even names them different things when he doesn't. But in Linkin Park, there you can definitely see the iteration between. If you skip 4, you're like, whoa, this is pretty different. But if you take a Perfect Circle album that released the same time as a Tool album, they're pretty different. They're noticeable. They're not hugely iterative. And in some ways, I prefer the band give me something that at least is a derivation of what I really loved.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they just took a completely different process. Is like Tool sounds like this. If we want to have different sounds, or we want to explore different creative outlets, that's a different band. Great, let's do Pussifer. Let's do Perfect Circle. But I don't know. It seems like it would have been pretty cool to hear what would a Tool-inspired, change that would, maybe have an album every couple of years rather than the same type of album. What would that sound like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's bigger than humans. You don't want the people. You get this certain point in your life where you don't want the people around you to change. You don't want things to change. You found something that works. Like I said, you're just going to hold on to it. And we do that to everything, including our music tastes, including the bands we like, including our girlfriends. We don't welcome evolution, even though it's bound to happen, and the restriction of it has consequences.
Yeah.
And you don't, and I'm not saying that you have to like what things evolve into, and at some point they evolve into something that is not an honest expression of you, and you don't like it. Cool, move on. That's totally fine. You have all those old albums, and go find the next thing. But I feel like just complaining about it is like, oh, they shouldn't do this. This is. I'm like, well, and again, it obviously depends on their motives. Like I was saying, if you're just kind of trying, the new 30 Seconds to Mars album, I felt that was pretty pandery. I feel like they were trying to capitalize on a bunch of trends. I felt like that was, I mean, I don't know, but I feel like that was the bigger motivation, because the album before that wasn't as big as they wanted it to be, and they tried to figure out what was cool and did it because it was cool.
And that's, again, just the audience being able to sniff out disingenuous, just artists being disingenuous, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if that was that's what it felt like to me though.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's gonna have a different opinion, but yeah, that is what it is. I lost my train of thought there for a second.
That's okay. So I'd say with the agreements that as long as your intentions are to try to have continue an honest expression of yourself, then you should evolve. You should change your sound. You should like examine what it means to be your band or your solo thing. What is you? What does this project represent? Not what do you want it to? What does it actually represent?
Yeah, I mean, part of me thinks. I mean, if somebody really enjoys doing things a certain way, might as well do that. But I think part of being mirroring humanism through your music is growing and trying new things and learning and adapting and changing. And it's something that's important to not just keep playing the same tunes because. I mean, we've seen time and time again that people get bored unless you've changed the game and it's super unique and nobody else can copy this, and then you'll
unless you have Metallica status, like or you quit.
I mean, one of my buddies he's a drummer that plays in this band called Darwin D's. He sent me. He sent me this. It was a Metallica documentary about them making their most recent album or something like that, and it's literally like the cartoon Metalocalypse. Like these guys are just so. They're cartoon characters. They cannot seem to, and they're doing the same thing, and like the lead singer will get mad and like break a door and then go literally to Siberia and hunt tigers and come back and be like, all right, I'm ready to get back into this, and then they play their same Metallica shit, and it's like, man, how can playing to just a million people in a field really impact how you deal with just moving forward? It's like failing with success because, like, I mean, sure, people listen to Metallica nowadays, but like nobody's like mobbing on Metallica nowadays. It's
yeah. Yeah, so I'd say they're definitely that category of things an anomaly. But I mean, I think the problem is with us as listeners. Like we need to grow up. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like again. I think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there was it was like a meme or something about how it's like there's thousands and thousands and thousands of new songs coming out every single day, all brand new, all completely different, but all that I've been listening to for the last 2 years is like the same thing as I was listening to in 2008. It's the same playlist, and that's I mean, it's just the role of music in our life is a comfort, and you're comfortable listening to that and listening to certain music reminds me of certain times in my life, and people love to reminisce. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's like there's some times when I'm not in the mood to like let's try to find some new music or go on that Spotify Discover tab and like click around on new releases that aren't even anything that I listen to. I just want to bring up Sempiternal and just crank it and just do my thing.
Yeah, it's like the same thing as like the meme about like just watching The Office. Like
yeah, exactly.
There's like unlimited amazing like independent films or obscure things out there that would be like, man, this is my stuff. But you're like, I'd have to go through like 200 things to get to what I want. This is my comfort food. Just give me my Cheetos, like.
Exactly, dude. Oh man. And so that kind of is the same thing as what you were saying. It was like it's our responsibility as listeners to come out of our comfort zones as well, so that artists see support.
Ooh. Well, how about this then? Okay, so the problem, acknowledging that that's not going to happen. Like once you find something that works for you, you're probably going to like not let go of it. But we found what worked for us by being kids looking around and searching for something that spoke to us. And the only way Sympaternal spoke to you was that it happened to speak the language that you spoke at the time, you know? Yeah. And so by evolving your sound to be relevant, to be what the next generation, doesn't mean the next generation, but like be accessible to a market of people that are searching, you enable your music to be heard by a lot more people that never would hear it. I mean, again, you got to be careful, like, got to be wary of, like, at what point do you lose, like, is it inauthentic, you know? Or are you trying to reach people to be famous exclusively, or are you trying to reach people to be famous and so you can have an honest expression of yourself? You can do both, I think, but.
Yeah. And, I mean, another side of this is maybe thinking too much on this and just overanalyzing and reanalyzing and second guessing.
No.
Is something that is just it's inhibitive for the creative process, where it's like if you're sitting there and you're just starting a song and you're already thinking about like, oh man, I think this thing sounds too much like this other thing, like you're gonna trip yourself up. Like you have to kind of let go and just get into that groove of just being authentic and original and true to what you feel and from what you're trying to write. Then you'll be able to, create something and kind of modify things. Because I mean, many people have said that a lot of art is just variation on other art, you know, and that's where it all stems down to. We're building on things. Everybody's building and building and building to where we are now, and it's important to like find influence and find motivation from everywhere, all other sorts of music, and not be scared to identify that and use that in your own way, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a time and place to question your motives, and a time and place to not at all. You're like, well, I want to write something original, but I want it to be accessible. I gotta blah, 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 blah. It's like, you're not gonna write anything, probably. I mean, I think there's you and I are not the right people to ask about this, but like, what is the historical context of this? And I mean, I think we're in a bit of at least a marginally unprecedented era of it's just different now than it was in the 70s, you know? Like, how many bands from the 80s do you know that like evolved their sound? Rush, you know, maybe?
Yeah.
And they were weird to start off.
Is accessibility for writing music or just the variety of music?
Oh, I got several. So David Bowie. I mean, I'm not the hugest David Bowie fan in the world. I like it in theory. I just like musically. I like him. Yeah. But like his music like evolved, and like you listen to his, I'll go with his second album, or you go with Ziggy Stardust, you know, and you listen to his last album. I mean, it's definitely the same singer, but that's about the only thing. Like it's completely like not even in the same ballpark. I mean, granted, they're like 30 years apart or whatever, but I mean, if you look, and actually, I think it's a good, healthy way to look at it. We only look at it from one iteration to the next. I'm like, all right, it would be kind of weird if a person didn't evolve over 30 years. An evolution over 30 years requires a bunch of little evolution every year.
Yeah. David Bowie spent a good amount of time writing music in Berlin, actually. Funny enough, name drop that shit. Yeah, I agree with you. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. So, like, I guess as a fan, stop being pretentious. Let a band evolve and grow, and if they don't represent you anymore, that's fine. Let their old stuff represent you. As an artist, like, I think it's like be very cognizant. This is a two-way relationship, and of the consequences of evolving forward, but also and embrace those the honesty, the honest expression, even if it means you may alienate some people. But don't complain when it happens. Linkin Park.
Yeah.
Well, sweet man, dude. Thanks so much for calling from across the oceans.
No problem. It was great to talk about this kind of stuff. It really gives me a lot of motivation, and hope to hear from you again soon.
Definitely, dude. All right, thanks, man. See ya.